All right, so for the self-check 4.6, this will be probably take you longer than most assignments, but it's really important to know it's part of our curriculum, and you will see some tests like this on an ACT test, possibly or whatever, but these are ACT type questions about the equation of a circle. And so I just wanted to go over that. You'll have one assignment. You will not be tested on this. So this will be basically your test for this particular concept. So keep that in mind. So just kind of understand and go through these problems. There's 13 problems on this assignment. You have to complete the square. It does take a little bit longer, but it's not difficult because we've done these concepts before, but it just does take a little bit longer than some of the other problems that we've done. But we'll just be doing one assignment on this. But the equation for a circle is, this is the basic equation, is it's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So that's the equation for a circle. H and k are the center of your circle. So those would be like the coordinates, like the x coordinate and the y coordinate of your circle, and r is the radius. So that's kind of what all these stands for. X is your x value and y, but h and k are the center of the circle. So if you see an equation written like this, h and k are your center, and your r value is your radius. So that we have this basic equation for a circle, you see this, all these numbers here and variables, and we'll set this up to solve and so that you can see what the center is. All right, so first of all, you put the x values together, you put the y values together, and put the number on the other side of the equal sign. So you've got, if we look this, you've got x and x here, you've got y and y here, and you've got a number here. So you want the number to go over on the other side of the equation, and the x's together, y's together, and then your number on the other side. So let's just rewrite it. We write this as x squared plus 8x. I leave a little space here since I know I'm going to be completing the square. And then I have plus y squared, and my other y value is right here, plus 6y. And then I leave another space because you're going to be completing it twice. And since you have a negative 10 here, to move it to the other side, you do the opposite, which is add. So you add 10 to both sides, so the 10 comes over to this side. So since it was negative here, it's positive over on this side. Okay, so here's what you do. You look at this and make sure that the value in front of your x squared is a 1. You look at the value in front of your x, and you take it, you divide it by 2. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then you add whatever that value is squared. Okay, so you divide that by 2 and add it squared. And if you do that to that side, you have to do it to this side. Okay, and you'll do the same thing with your y value. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. You add to that 3 squared. Add 3 squared. I didn't need to put this around in parentheses, but that's the basic concept. Okay, and the reason you do that now is because you can put it in this form if you do that. So you have a value of x here. When you complete the square, all you do is take the square root of this, square root of that, and you use the sign of whatever's here. So this is x plus the square root of the whole thing, which is plus 16 if we're doing that, and plus 9. But the square root of 16 is 9. So it's just, it's that number that you took before you squared it. So that's 4 squared. And plus in between here. And on this side we have y plus whatever number it is before you squared it. So plus 3. It's all pluses because they're all pluses here. They'd be negatives if there was a negative in here. Okay, so y plus 3 squared equals that. So now on this side, you are going to combine all those together. So you take 10, you add to that 4 squared, and add 3 squared. So the total is 35. Okay, so since it's x minus h, inside of here, your h has to be whatever the opposite of what's inside of here. So if it's plus 4, your x value will be negative 4. If it's plus 3, your y value will be negative 3. So the center of this equation is y equals, h and k are negative 4 and negative 3. So if you did, whoops, I clicked on the wrong thing. You could click on that. But anyway, that's the answer for that one. And we'll go through a few examples so that hopefully we can get this. So here we go. The next one, we will do the exact same thing, and we'll walk you through it. So you put the x values together, the y values together, the number on the other side of the equal sign. So your x values here are x squared and 4x. Your y values, I'll leave a little space. My y's are y squared and negative 10y. The equals here, so I left a space behind the x's, space behind the y's, and negative 20 right here, so I add 20 to both sides to get it on the other side. So on this side, I have a positive 20. Okay, since this is value right here is a 1, I take half of the 1 in front of the single x. So half of 4 is 2. I add 2 squared. Half of negative 10 is a negative 5. So I add negative 5 squared. Now, if I add a 2 squared here, I have to add it over here. If I add a negative 5 squared, I have to add it over here. Okay, you can't just put it on one side because the equation has to be equal. So if I add it to this side, I have to add it to this side. All right, so this created, the whole reason I manipulated it this way is to make myself a perfect square. Okay, and that perfect square is half of this, which is this number. So it's x plus 2 squared. It's always going to be the number that you halved. It's this right here, divide by 2, so it's 2. So I go plus here. This is a y. I take this number, whatever it is that I halved, which is negative 5, goes right there. Squared equals. So I have 20 plus 2 squared plus negative 5 squared. And that equals 49 on this side. Okay, so the h will be the opposite of this, which is negative 2. The k, so that's your first value of the center of your circle, and the y value of the center of your circle will be the opposite of this. So if I have negative 5, then it's a positive 5 right here. So it's a negative 2, positive 5 right here. So you'll click on that one. This is your radius squared. So in order to figure out a radius, and we'll do this later on, you take the square root of that, and if you take the square root of 49, it is 7, so your radius is 7 for this equation. So just so you know what's happening here, if I had a grid, my center of my circle would be back 2 and up 5 right here. The radius would be 7. So if this is 5, the radius would come here, and the circle would be 7 units surrounding the center of this. Now that's a terrible circle because I'm not drawing correctly. I mean, very good, but that gets the idea. So the center would be at negative 2, positive 5. The radius is 7, so it's 7 units surrounding that center. So that's kind of what's happening. I'll show you that a little bit later. Like we'll just, when there's some that'll ask what the radius is. In fact, in question 4, we'll get to that. But we won't get there yet. We want to do this other example first. So we start by putting the x's together and then the y's. So we start x squared plus 4x space y squared minus 14y space equals this 28. It's positive here, so if I move it to the other side, it is, you just change the sign. Because I subtract from this side, subtract from that side. So that's how we get there. So with the x's, I'm going to add half of whatever this is squared. So half of 2 squared. So I have to add 2 squared here. Half of this is negative 7. So it's plus negative 7 squared. And plus a negative 7 squared. You have to put this in parentheses if you're going to use a calculator. Because if you don't and you just go negative 7 squared, it just squares the 7. It doesn't square the negative. And you'll get a sign problem. So make sure that you square everything that's in parentheses. Got to put a plus in between here. So I added this on purpose so that I would get x plus whatever that number is. And the y makes y whatever that number is. And again, you do that on purpose so that it creates this perfect square. Okay, and then just combine all of this on this other side. So you just negative 28 plus 2 squared plus parentheses negative 7 parenthesis squared if you're using the calculator, but that equals 25 when you add all those things together. The center of your circle will be the opposite of whatever this is. So if it's positive 2, it'll be negative 2. The opposite of whatever here. So if it's negative 7, it'll be positive 7. So you can see that the center of your circle will be at negative 2, positive 7. So on a coordinate plane, that would be the center of your circle. The radius is the square root of what's over here. So the square root of 25 is 5. So the center is at negative 2. Oops. So the center is at negative 2, positive 7. I wonder if I could. No, that won't work. So we'll just say negative 2, positive 7, and it'll go out 5, and it just makes a circle with the radius of 5 around negative 2, positive 7. Okay, number 4. Again, we do the exact same thing. X's together, Y's together, all on the same side of the equation, number on the other. So our X's are here. X squared minus 24x. Now I'm going to put the Y's, and you have this little space. Put the Y's next to it. So add Y squared to get it over here on the other side, and I subtract 16y. Because if it's on the right side, I want it on the left. So I subtract it to get rid of those. Leave a little space. I have a positive 39, so it's going to be negative 39 on the other side. Okay, we complete the square for both the x's and the y's. So take half of negative 24, which is negative 12. And you're going to add the negative 12 squared. Half. I'm going to add half of this, so it's negative 8 squared. And if you do it to one side, you do it to the other. Okay, so on this side, it creates x, whatever that number is, plus y, whoops, I gotta put that squared on there, y, whatever that number is, equals, now combine those together, negative 39 plus parenthesis negative 12 parenthesis squared plus parenthesis negative 8 parenthesis squared. And on this side we get 169 when you add all that together. So the center will be the opposite, the x is going to be the opposite of this, which is 12. The k, or this other number, will be the opposite of that, which is 8. So you look here and you have these two options right here. Now the radius is not the number that's here, it's the square root of that, because this is r squared. That's what's on there. So in order to find r, or the radius, you have to take the square root of 169, which is 13. So r equals 13. So you're going to select 12 and 8 with an r of 13. Okay, so that one, if you're going to graph it on a graph, that circle would be over 12, up 8, with a radius of 13. Be a circle around there with 13, and that's not accurate, but you can kind of get the gist. That's kind of how it works. Okay, now question 5. Again, center of a circle, and that's your equation. So you just kind of keep repeating this. I'm going to do 5 and 6 just to give you a couple more examples, and then we'll stop this. Okay, x is together, y is together, number on the other side. So I say x squared minus 6x space plus y squared plus 12y space equals positive 29 on this side. So if I move it to the other side, it becomes negative 20. Okay, half of negative 6. So you always add whatever that is squared. So half of negative 6 is a negative 3 squared. Add it to both sides. Half of 12 is a 6 squared. Okay, so this becomes x, whatever that number is your second number, because you're taking half of this is what the reason, it's the square root of this, and the square root of a negative 3 squared is negative 3. That's the whole reason we selected this, in order to make this perfect square. So add to that. Y, whatever that number is plus 6. It's half this number squared. So that equals, now I've got to, on the other side, plug this stuff in. And so I go negative 29 plus negative 3 squared plus 6 squared. And that equals a positive 16. So my center is the opposite of this, opposite of that, is at 3, negative 6. My radius is square root of 16, which is 4. So radius is 4. But the question for this one asks, what is the center? So you select that one for the center. Okay. Here we go for one more example. X is together, Y is together, number on the other side. So I have x squared minus 20x. I have moving if it's negative on this side and I move it to the other side, it's going to be positive y squared. This is a positive 18x. So if I move to the other side, it's going to be, you just change the sign. And on this side, I have a positive 37, so it's going to be negative on the other side. Hopefully that makes sense, how I just changed the sign here to get this, change the sign here to get that. And since I moved this over, I just changed the sign to get it over there. All right, so, whoops, I've got to add complete the square first. So half of this is negative 10 squared. Half of this is negative 9 squared. So I add that negative 10 squared. I add that negative 9 squared. And on this side, it's just this number. And whatever the number that is, you write that down. Plus y, whatever that number is, you write that down. And that equals, and I just have to plug all these things in. It's negative 37 plus a negative 10 squared plus a negative 9 squared. That equals 144. So the center is 10, the opposite of this, the opposite of that, and 9. And the square root of 144 is my r. So r equals 12. So you can see that there's these different answers here. The center is at 10 and 9. The radius, 10 and 9, and the radius is 12. I clicked on the wrong one. So just make sure that you look through that. You can see it gives options for both. You can see how to solve that. Now I'm going to just scroll down and make sure, let's get rid of this calculation first, to make sure. Okay, so if you're looking at this one, we would solve just the way we have. I'm just looking through because to make sure that I've done all the examples. So here it says which equation is shown by the graph. Okay, so if you look at this, you can see it. The radius is really right in the center because it's 1, 2, 3, 4 to this side and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the center is at 0, 0. Okay, so the equation would be, and we'll go through and look, but it would be x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared equals the radius, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 squared. Now, since it's 0, this drops off, leaving just x squared. Since it's 0 here, the 0 drops off, leaving me y squared. And 4 squared is 16. So it still follows that same pattern. Let's scroll down and see what it has here. But can you see that so none of these answers are correct because it would be close to being correct, but right there, because it has to equal r squared, and r is 4, and so it has to be 16. We got the 16 here, but the center is not at 4, 4. The center would have to be at 4, 4 here. So when we look at these, none of these answers are correct for this problem. But you can see how you solve a problem like that by just following what the center is. You plug it in to solve for this. So this is the same. Graph the following equation to find the radius. So you do this exact same thing here. Complete the square. And it looks like it just wants the radius, though. You're not going to plug in what the center is. But you have to complete the square in order to solve for the radius. The same thing here and the same thing here. I'll do this last example. You don't have to watch this, as you guys all know. Whoops, I just don't know what I did there. I have no idea what I clicked on, but we'll do this. Oh, how do I get it out of here is the problem. Anyway, let's just write over it to solve for this. Okay, so x is on one side, numbers on the other. It looks like it already has that. So half of this is 3. Okay, and on this side, we have negative 16. We want to add 3 squared. So then we also have plus y squared minus 8y and you want to add half of this squared. So half of that is a negative 4 squared. Negative 4 squared. Okay, so the equation here, you actually, since it's just asking for the radius, I don't have to figure out the equation. I can just do the radius side to save you some time. So on this one, we just would say negative 16 plus 3 squared plus negative 4 squared equals 9. So you take the square root of this number to figure out the radius. So the radius, you just plug in and type in 3 there. Okay, so that's basically, and you don't have to figure out the equation of the circle because all it's asking is to find the radius. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Like I say, this is a good concept to know, just equations of circles, just because they do have this on the ACT, and that's the whole reason that I even put that in your assignment, just so that you'd understand that, because you do not work through this in your junior year. So anyway, if you have questions, let me know. Thanks.